Welcome to Robert Joodat Podcast. Imagine walking into a massive global marketplace.
Like a stock exchange or something.
Yeah, exactly. A bustling stock exchange or an open-air bazaar. Usually, a space like that is defined by noise. You expect aggressive bidding, people shouting, constant movement, deals being struck in real time.
Right, it's chaotic.
Exactly.
Hmm?
But imagine stepping onto that exact same trading floor today. And it is just completely silent. The stalls are set up, the goods are on display, but half the shoppers have simply dropped their baskets and walked away.
They haven't just left the building, they've stopped participating in the economy of exchange entirely.
Yes.
And that visual captures the current state of modern romance perfectly. It's basically an abandoned marketplace.
And that abandoned marketplace is our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring the modern relationship crisis today. We want to understand the psychological, economic, and cultural drivers reshaping human connection.
Specifically why so many people are just opting out.
Right, especially young men. They're actively opting out of dating, marriage, and traditional family structures. And we have a massive stack of sources for this. We're pulling from clinical psychology transcripts, global demographic data, the legal history of divorce.
We've got feminist critiques in here, conservative Christian theology, sociological studies on the manosphere. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And before we really jump in, I want to be super clear with you, the listener. Because these sources contain some highly politically charged content spanning both left-wing and right-wing ideologies, we are not taking any sides today.
Right, our job is just to impartially report on the content.
Exactly. We're conveying the ideas in the original text, not endorsing them. Our goal is to completely reframe how you view modern romance, whether you are actively navigating the dating market, happily married, or just insanely curious about these massive societal shifts.
So to really understand this, we have to grasp the sheer scale of the withdrawal first. Why are we calling it a crisis?
Yeah, lay out the numbers for us.
Well, we are looking at a catastrophic decline across all forms of relationships. Global marriage rates are at historic lows. Half the world's population currently lives in countries that are below reproductive replacement rates.
Which is staggering to think about.
It really is. We're watching a fundamental restructuring of human socializing.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to me it feels like a total paradox. The initial assumption is always, well, people are avoiding marriage, but they're making up for it with casual intimacy.
That's the common narrative, yeah, the whole hookup culture thing.
But the data in our sources shows that hookup culture is actually collapsing. Listen to this statistic. 31% of men aged 18 to 24 report zero sexual activity in the past year.
31%.
Yeah, almost a third. And that rate has nearly doubled in less than 2 decades. We have smartphones in our pockets. It has literally never been easier to instantly connect with another human being. So why the mass isolation?
Because that very technology, it fundamentally altered the mechanism of how we assign and seek value in a partner. We have a clinical psychologist in our sources, Dr. Orion Taraban, who analyzes this.
Oh, right. His breakdown of the dating market?
Yeah. He points out that over 50% of relationships are now initiated online. So the dating landscape just completely centralized. It became a literal marketplace.
A globalized one, at that.
Exactly. Traditional strategies for finding a partner, where you competed within your local community or your church or your immediate social circle, those just don't apply anymore. It's now this hyper-competitive, top-of-the-funnel environment.
It's like the corporate job portal dynamic. You know what I mean?
The resume pie.
Yeah, exactly. You take a local job that used to maybe get 10 applicants, you put it on a global digital portal, and suddenly 1 million people are competing for the exact same 10% of high-paying jobs.
Right, so everyone is looking at the same small pool.
Everyone on these apps is swiping on the exact same highly visible candidates at the very top. And that just creates a massive, insurmountable pile of rejected resumes for the average person. It's universal frustration.
And universal frustration really is the key phrase there. Relationships, at their core, are an exchange of value. People are seeking a combination of security, physical intimacy, excitement, emotional support.
Right.
So when you centralize that market digitally, the perceived cost of entry for the average person skyrockets.
Yeah.
You face constant, frictionless rejection.
Just swipe, rejected.
That's exactly. But conversely, for the people at the very top of that funnel, the perceived value of any single connection actually drops because they are paralyzed by this endless illusion of better options.
The paradox of choice.
Right. So when the mathematical reality of that market stops making sense, rational actors just stop shopping.
Which brings us to the second section of our deep dive. We need to look at how this market frustration is specifically impacting young men because it's leading to severe psychological distress and these radical ideological movements.
Yeah, the suicide statistics alone are grim. Men account for nearly 80% of suicides in the U.S.
80%. That is heartbreaking. And the clinical sources we're looking at frequently point to a pervasive sense of invisibility driving this distress.
Yeah, Dr. Taraban's clinical perspective notes that society generally does not treat men well when it extracts no utility from them. If a young man lacks significant financial resources or elevated social status or some highly distinct skill, he often experiences a profound sense of just being unseen.
Like he literally doesn't matter.
Right. He becomes invisible to potential partners in the dating market, and he feels unneeded by the broader economic market. That dual rejection creates a massive crisis of worth.
I do want to push back on one of the biological arguments presented in the clinical data, though.
Okay, which one?
The part where the text suggests that evolutionary biology is clashing with modern societal roles. It controversially claims that when men step away from competitive provider roles to stay home and nurture children, their oxytocin rises, causing a drop in testosterone.
Which then leads to depression and lowered sex drive, according to the source.
Right. And conversely, it claims women in high-stress corporate fields see their testosterone rise. I mean, again, impartially reporting this, but are they seriously suggesting that a father taking care of his kids is biologically damaging to him?
Well, the clinical argument there isn't rendering a moral judgment on parenting roles. It's highlighting the friction of an evolutionary mismatch. The theory they propose is that human neurochemistry evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to reward highly specific survival behaviors.
Okay.
So when societal roles invert rapidly, like over a single generation, the biological reward systems don't adapt at the same speed. They argue this cultural shift has created a purpose void for men.
Because society no longer strictly requires them to be the sole stoic protectors and providers.
Exactly. But it hasn't mapped out a fulfilling alternative path that aligns with those underlying biological drives.
And as they say, nature abhors a vacuum, which completely explains the explosion of the manosphere and MGTOW.
MGTOW, for those who don't know, is men going their own way.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't fallen down this particular internet rabbit hole, MGTOW is this anti-feminist, male separatist online community. Their premise is that modern society is inherently gynocentric.
Meaning it's rigged to benefit women socially and legally.
Right, and they believe society just treats men as disposable utilities. So their solution is radical separatism. They actively advocate for men to completely avoid marriage, cohabitation, and romantic commitments with women just to preserve themselves.
It's a total opt-out strategy.
But my question is this actually a widespread thing moving the needle on a macro level, or is it just an extremely loud internet echo chamber?
What's fascinating here is how effectively these movements monetize that feeling of being unneeded. Regardless of their mainstream size, we're watching the rise of performative masculinity influencers who step directly into this purpose void.
Oh, absolutely. They're everywhere on social media.
Yeah, and they aren't just offering an echo chamber. They are offering a harsh, highly structured solution to a very real crisis of meaning. They look at a young man failing in the dating market and basically say, you aren't failing at the game itself is rigged. The winning move is to stop playing.
It's like navigating this complex multiplayer video game where the developers patch the rules every single week.
Right.
And every new patch seems to nerf your character's abilities. Eventually, you don't even try to learn the new rules. You just put the controller down, turn off the console, and walk away entirely.
That's a great analogy. And that withdrawal has profound consequences. But we have to look at the counter-argument running through our stack of research today.
Right, the pushback against the panic.
Exactly. Because we've just explored the narrative that this boy crisis is a biological and cultural inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
But there is massive pushback from academic sociologists suggesting this entire cultural panic is masking a much simpler structural problem.
I was actually really struck by the academic critique of the book The Boy Crisis, because the original book claims that dad deprivation is the ultimate root cause of male distress.
They cited a biological study for that, didn't they?
Yes, they claimed that boys without fathers actually have shorter telomeres.
Remind us what telomeres are.
They're the biomarkers on our DNA associated with aging and cellular disease. They literally argued that father absence damages a boy's DNA.
Wow. But when the academics looked at the actual sociological data, that narrative fell apart.
Completely fell apart.
The academics pointed out a massive flaw in how that telomere data was interpreted. The underlying research actually revealed that the association between father loss and shorter telomere length was mostly mediated by family income and social class.
So it wasn't the physical absence of a male role model degrading their DNA, it was the chronic physiological stress of poverty flooding their developing systems with cortisol.
Exactly. And that highlights the crucial distinction between what sociologists call thin versus thick analysis.
Putting that down for us.
So a thin analysis looks at the dating crisis and blames feminism or internet culture or a lack of masculinity. A thick analysis looks at structural power, poverty, and economic realities.
Oh, I see.
And the thick analysis demonstrates that economic security is a massive, non-negotiable prerequisite to marriage today. Labor force participation, stagnant wages, skyrocketing housing costs. These are the real gatekeepers dictating who gets married.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because it is infinitely easier to blame an abstract cultural shift than it is to, say, fix the housing market.
Exactly.
So is the so-called marriage strike actually just can't afford a mortgage strike?
The economic data heavily supports that. Furthermore, the academic pushback stresses that young men do possess high emotional intelligence. They find deep purpose in male friendships. They aren't inherently emotionally illiterate.
Right, they're just reacting rationally to an impossible economic landscape, which makes this hesitation to date, they call it gamophobia, the fear of commitment. It makes total sense.
It aligns flawlessly with psychologist Carol Rusbolt's investment model of commitment. People avoid investing their time and emotional bandwidth when the economic and emotional risks vastly outweigh the guaranteed returns.
I mean, if you can't afford a house and you have massive student debt and a potential divorce could financially ruin you, the mathematically rational choice is to withhold your investment entirely.
Right. But human beings still have fundamental biological needs for intimacy and connection.
We do. And if the physical reality of relationships becomes too economically risky and emotionally expensive, we are naturally going to seek a cheaper, safer alternative.
Enter technology.
Yes, the fake meat of intimacy.
Right. The emergence of high-speed, freely available pornography and the rapid development of AI romantic companions are fundamentally altering human drive.
I found Dr. Taraban's application of Freudian psychoanalysis here incredibly compelling. He discusses this concept of sublimation. We usually think of the libido purely as a desire for sex, but in this context, it's defined as a broad creative life force.
Right. Historically, human civilization was built on repressing raw sexual urges and channeling or sublimating that energy into pro-social actions.
Like building roads or starting companies.
Exactly. You strive for societal success, powered fundamentally by the underlying imperative to become attractive to a mate. It's the engine of human ambition.
But what happens when that engine is siphoned off? When men can exist in a perpetually satisfied state via screens, that drive is neutralized.
They lose the motivation to take massive risks.
And they lose the willingness to endure the painful, awkward rejection required to secure a real partner. It really is like eating highly processed junk food or fake meat. It perfectly hijacks the brain's evolutionary craving for calories, or in this case, intimacy, but it leaves the body completely malnourished.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are aggressively medicating our loneliness with dopamine. Real relationships require immense friction. You have to compromise, navigate conflict, be vulnerable.
You risk getting hurt.
Yeah, but endless, frictionless digital satisfaction removes all of that pain. And without passing through that friction, you cannot forge a durable human bond.
Which forces us to look at the institution of marriage itself. Because as tech offered a frictionless alternative to love, the legal institution of marriage attempted to survive by becoming frictionless itself.
And we really have to ask if that modernization helped or hurt. Elizabeth Scott's legal analysis provides the framework here. She traces the shift from fault-based divorce to modern no-fault divorce.
Under the old system, to legally end a marriage, you had to prove a severe breach of contract, right? Like adultery or extreme cruelty.
Right. And that led to absurd legal loopholes. Spouses in New York who mutually wanted a divorce would literally hire photographers to catch them in staged hotel room affairs.
Wait, really? They faked it?
Oh, yeah. They were committing perjury just to legally satisfy the court's requirement for fault. It was a deeply toxic system.
Wow.
So the legal system shifted to no-fault divorce, allowing couples to separate without assigning legal blame. But that shift fundamentally redefined the institution.
How so?
Marriage transitioned from being a binding moral duty to a non-binding commitment based on self-realization and therapeutic communication. If the marriage is no longer serving your personal growth, The law dictates that you can easily dissolve it.
Contrast that with the reformed conservative theology presented in our sources, again, maintaining our impartiality here. But that perspective views marriage not as a vehicle for self-actualization, but as a vital, permanent passage into adulthood.
Right. It operates on a completely different paradigm, where the rigid commitment precedes the personal realization. It's incentivized by religious doctrines that restrict sex outside of marriage.
That contrast perfectly highlights the unintended consequences of modern legal neutrality. By making exits legally seamless, it inadvertently transformed the psychological nature of the commitment.
It incentivized bailing at the first sign of severe friction. And the sociological data is clear that when these quick exits occur, it's the children who overwhelmingly bear the severe psychological and economic costs.
So, what does this all mean for you? If marriage is now treated by the legal system essentially as a monthly subscription service you can cancel at any time, why wouldn't a rational actor be terrified to invest their life savings into it?
That vulnerability is why legal scholars are increasingly exploring pre-commitment theory. Because exit is so dangerously frictionless today, some scholars argue for voluntary, legally enforceable premarital contracts that mandate strict waiting periods for divorce.
Wait, so you willingly tie your own hands?
Not trapped, bound. Think of Ulysses tying himself to the mast of his ship so he wouldn't steer it into the rocks when he heard the sirens.
Ah, I love that analogy.
Right. It forces couples to think deeply before entering the contract. And crucially, it forces them to work through the inevitable periods of severe disappointment rather than immediately hitting the legal eject button.
It attempts to revive the structural security of an enduring commitment, but without returning to the toxic, perjury-filled days of fault-based laws. It's artificially injecting the friction back into the system.
Because the friction is what makes the bond strong enough to survive.
Exactly. And ultimately, our ability to endure that friction comes all the way back to how we are raised. According to the Institute for Family Studies, the root of this entire crisis might start in childhood.
Yeah, the IFS data links the superficiality of modern hookup culture and the fear of commitment directly to a massive increase in attachment disorders among young adults.
The mechanism is pretty straightforward, right?
Very. Trusting in romantic love in your 20s or 30s is largely a continuation of the unconditional love and emotional security provided by physically present parents in the first 3 years of life.
If your nervous system doesn't learn secure attachment early on, the risks of adult relationships will always feel insurmountable. So whether you are single, swiping on apps, or married, it all distills down to this: human connection fundamentally requires accepting risk.
It requires embracing disappointment, navigating conflict, and actively choosing to invest value in another person.
Even when the math tells you to walk away. Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. As artificial intelligence becomes completely indistinguishable from reality, and as virtual reality companions become capable of flawlessly adapting to our every emotional need.
Instantly and without ever challenging us.
Right. Will future generations view biological, messy, conflict-ridden human marriage as a standard life milestone? Or will they view it as an eccentric, highly dangerous, extreme sport reserved only for the bravest thrill seekers? Think about it. We'll see you on the next deep dive.